Hello and welcome to another episode of the Quest podcast, Queer Eye Straight Talk. I'm joined by my lovely co-host G at the G Life. So today we're going to be talking about diving with a purpose and what that really means. I mean, feel free to, stay silent or whatever you want.
I don't know. What do you think it means?
Well, diving with a purpose is basically a group of black scuba divers who specialize in, maritime archaeology, I guess.
Black American,
yes, very important. And that is significant because, there are some black Americans who believe that the slave trade is kind of a myth, didn't really happen. Just like you have Holocaust deniers who are Jewish, very rare, but it does happen. Netanyahu. So, I've found a really nice little video that I'm going to play. Maybe I can play it to start off with. It's like 5 minutes long, just introducing who they are and what they do, and then we can get into discussion about it. How do you feel about that?
That's fine. Are you going to play the video now?
I'm going to play the video now, yes. Okay, just give me 1 second.
There's all this history that exists. Maybe the metaphor of water is good when you dive, but it's a completely different world. It's so below the surface.
Yes, let's do some gear checking.
And I think African history is like that. We have not touched the surface. It's worlds of it below. So that makes me inspired. It makes me excited. My name is Tara Roberts. I'm following a group of black scuba divers, historians, and archaeologists who are searching for slave shipwrecks around the world. I often think of the Middle Passage as the origin story, specifically for Africans in the Americas. So the Middle Passage is actually the triangular travel route that was taken during the slave trade. They estimate that there were approximately 35,000 ships that brought about 12 million Africans to the Americas. But likely 500 of those ships wrecked on the passage over. Of those 500 ships that wrecked, we know that somewhere around 5 have been found, and only 2 have actually been documented and excavated. So there's a whole portion of history that's just missing, that no one is looking for, thinking about, adding back into our collective memory.
Attention everybody, attention on deck, attention on deck. We have a log, a master log of every diver. And in this master log...
The mission of Diving with a Purpose is for people of African descent specifically to participate in restoration work around our oceans and to resurrect and recover our history.
Okay, now we have an area of this artifact scatter, and we will use that area to place this along the baseline to give us an accurate idea of how the wreck was displaced over time.
So everything down there on the seafloor has a story to tell, essentially. And so they're just developing the skills initially to go on the wreck site, assist some maritime archaeologists to tell the story about what happened in the wrecking event, where the ship came from, how it was constructed, just everything around the wrecking event and the ship itself.
So right now, we are going to this area here. A lot of wreckage. We're not sure what it is, but we're trying to get the area of this whole area.
the search for slave shipwrecks, it requires divers for sure to go down and to be able to find the wrecks and use their eyes and their skills to search. But it also relies very much on historians and archaeologists. These wrecks are not intact. Most of them were wooden boats, so they're in pieces all over the ocean floor. It's not like you could just be diving and go, aha, I found a slave shipwreck. Really, you have to go through the archival records.
Welcome back.
What's happening with these scientists, these historians, these archaeologists who are participating in the Diving with a Purpose work, they are gathering the evidence that shows who we really are, that shifts the story that's been told for generations about what it means to be Black. These people are doing the science, they're doing the work to disrupt that narrative.
What we're doing here with DWP, what we do as like historical archaeologists, we tell untold stories. We tell stories that haven't made it into our history books because people like us don't write those history books. So there's a way that us being down there, underwater, on land, asking new questions, creating a new archive so that people after us have the sources they need to really ask thought-provoking questions about their past, their present, and where they can go in the future.
The human journey of Africans in the Americas has not been told from this lens anywhere. And what a really interesting story to tell.
So yeah, what did you make of that?
Yeah, no. I mean, when I watch these sort of things, I think about myself as a person growing up in the States, and there's so many things that I was interested in and didn't feel like I had the opportunity to do, like archaeology, like these sort of like deep dives or like explorations into your own culture, because it didn't even seem like it was available. Like the only thing that you ever heard about growing up is like Egypt, you know what I mean? Like pyramids. And that was enough to be like mystical to me. And I always had an interest in that. But to understand how important it is now, because I think that even at some point, particularly in the States, there were some things that you just weren't encouraged to do as a Black person. So like, and this is one of those things. And so I am actually super impressed and happy that there's this organization, that there's this group, and that it's also encouraging more Black people to explore culture and history and the things that are not revealed to us. Because we have not been in charge of writing our story. So this is really important. I think they're doing amazing and important work for the culture.
Okay. I mean, how do you think that someone who denies it would respond to something like this? Because I've got a list of slave ships that I'm going to talk about in a minute that were recorded, and one of them is on display in a museum in Florida. I'm just wondering why this rhetoric was even needed to be created. Like, I understand.
You mean Black Americans denying that they're descendants of the enslaved?
Yeah.
I think it's a couple things, particularly about America and Americans and being Black in America. There has been so many iterations of what is Black and what is Black American in the United States since the period of slavery. We've never gotten to define our Blackness or what it is to be Black in the United States. It kind of was given to us, and then we had to redefine and shape and try and fight against some of the ideas of what they told us we were, right? And then we had to fight ourselves too to determine who we are, because we didn't necessarily have the opportunity and the autonomy to develop our identity in the same way like other cultures might. Um, and I think that this idea, and I honestly I don't think is that widespread, although, you know, I don't want to say ignorance is always louder, but it's kind of the way it is, you know, like ignorance is always very loud. And I think that, especially right now in social media, sometimes I'm not even sure how serious to take people. Or are they just rage baiting when they say stuff like this? Because I can bet you if they were like, well, you know what, only descendants of the enslaved will get reparations, I bet they'll change their minds. So,
Yeah, that's a
like,
good
you
point.
can't come in here talking about you Native American and get like Black American like shit. You know what I mean? Like whatever. So I think that, and not to say that natives do not
No.
actually are not owed something as well in the United States. That's not my point. But what I'm saying is specific for those that have been descendants of the enslaved. I do think that it is a part of a identity crisis and a desire to define who they are outside of the narrative of slavery, because in the United States, the origin story of Black Americans isn't pretty. You know, it isn't romantic like so many other origin stories in the United States. Oh, we, you know, came through Ellis Island and blah, blah, blah. And even the narrative around immigrants coming to Ellis Island, the whole like, oh, they saw the Statue of Liberty and this, that, and the other, it leaves out our narrative. France gifted that Statue of Liberty to the United States as a representative of the end of slavery. There's actually fallen chains around the feet. You can't see them, right? And it was supposed to have, she was supposed to have broken chains in one of her hands, the torch in one hand and broken chains in the other hand. And that has all been, they removed the chains and they put, well, I think the chains are there, but they put something on top of it so you don't see them. And then the other chains around her foot, because of the pedestal she's on, you don't see it. And that was actually until I think sometime in the mid or early 2000s, they didn't even talk about the fact that the Statue of Liberty was representative of the broken chains of slavery. And they just talk about it as the, you know, give us your poor, your whatever, whatever. That was never the case for the Statue of Liberty. That was never her definition.
What do you mean, give us the poor? What was that? What was
You
that?
know, like the whole thing, the melting pot thing of America. Bring us your poor, your hungry. Like that was supposed to be like the welcoming for immigrants to the United States. Because they needed population, right? So they were like, give us whoever the hell's coming to fill the country. So I think that ultimately our history and the things that we could have that could have like helped define some of those ideas of freedom, because we fought for that freedom, and I think that's something to be proud of, to be aware, like to give honor to our ancestors, because we wouldn't be free without them, you know, like so. But I just think it's the identity crisis, and I think it's the lack of ability to have defined who you are, what your blackness means, you know what I mean, as opposed to in contrast to whiteness. So I think that there's so many levels to the emotional and mental chains that still exist in the United States, not just for Black Americans, but all around. Like every American, I think, who grew up, born and raised in America has some form of PTSD that they have to unlock and really face. So I think that's part of it. I think that's just those people lost in the sauce who don't want to face. And I don't, you know, I feel like these identity crises are symptoms of the blackness that we have been given. And I don't know, it's just another symptom of that for me.
What do you mean symptoms of the blackness you've been given? You mean as defined by white racist America?
That's been defined in like across the globe. I mean, there's so much anti-blackness, and what we are told is black, right? So in particular in the United States, we were told what black was. Black was lazy. Black was, you know, dirty. Black was all of these awful things. white was the opposite of that, right? So that was beaten into our ancestors, and then it was beaten into us, like generationally. Even once people were free, it was still something that was taught to us, limitations that we were put into, like, not just socially, but we had to limit ourselves as well because of the danger associated with being Black. So there's so many restrictions around thought and the idea of who you are, not actually being who you are, but how somebody defines you, and then how the world decides to define you as an African person, right? So, particularly again in the US, growing up, you see lots of imagery of Africa, right? Being poor, being hungry, being, like destitute. And then someone wants to call you African and you're like, oh God, you know what I mean? Like, what does that mean about me? Right. So to get over those things in a white country, particularly after being subjugated for hundreds of years, where does that leave a people? You know what I mean? Like, where does that leave you? So these are all symptoms to me of being defined in a certain way, and that definition just happens to be under Blackness, um, and what that looked like, because they presented it as though it was not a good thing and more of a sickness and a disease than it was just a way of another human group of people. Because like Blackness doesn't even mean anything in in this realm of like race is all a social construct. Mm-hmm. So we had to really understand that is not even a thing. It's a social construct that we've been given, and social constructs are real, but all of the definitions around it, those were not created by us. Those are all symptoms of what white people told us. Mm. And so we have to break out of those, like those shackles in our mind and our emotions and our spirits. So I think that's why I say a symptom of being Black.
Okay. Why are Americans so big on anti-Blackness? Because I find that it's almost like a comfort when, for some Black Americans to be like, oh, the world's so anti-Black, like they really hate us. They really hate us. Like it's so annoying when I see that, because it really, I don't know, it just makes me want to shake.
You don't think the world is anti-Black?
I don't feel like, I don't like when Black people like hone in on it and be like, the world hates us, the world hates me, they're so anti-Black, like just focusing solely, laser vision focus on one small, like the minority of people that dislike you, right?
Minority?
Yes. First of all, let's break it down. So we've got the global minority, right? That's one way of looking at it. And I know when you're in the Western Hemisphere, it feels like the majority. I understand that, but
no, I won't say, like, minority is based on power to me, right? So that's the only reason we're minorities, is because we are the minority of power. And so when we look at anti-Blackness, okay, and the laws and the rules around anti-Blackness globally, then
what do you mean by that?
Why would they not let ships from Africa into Italy? Why would they rather those Black people fall into the water than come on land?
Okay, I didn't know about that. So obviously,
yeah, so they were blocking ships coming from, like, refugee ships coming from, like, it was a whole thing for like years when they started getting more because Africa is so close to Italy, right? So it's easier to get to Italy from Africa than like go around to, say, France or whatever. And so because it's easy to get into Italy from, like, easy but short distance to get into Europe from Africa, when they saw, and the propaganda around the immigration crisis is all anti-Black. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So when you
let's break it down. There's a couple of things, right? Mm-hmm. It's anti-other. It's xenophobic. So whether they are coming from Kenya or Libya, the treatment is going to be the same, or at least very, very, very similar, almost indistinguishable, right? Because they don't like
they're all Black.
They don't like the dirty Arabs, and they don't like the dirty Africans either. So they kind of
They
group
just
them
call
together.
Arab sad niggas, right? So
Right. Yeah.
and those and this is the thing about anti-blackness, okay? The Arabs, when they get a little bit of something, they're anti-black. So anti-blackness is not just white people. It is all of them. And so it's the problem isn't that Black Americans are like, oh, you know, it's all white people. The majority of the world, even other Black people, are anti-Black.
Okay, let me
That's the
explain.
thing.
Let me explain something about intersectionality. Okay, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a black person or a trans person. They're both very highly marginalized groups. Very, very highly marginalized groups. Yeah. What I mean by that is easy scapegoats politically, right, and socially. They become just easy targets. So I don't think that anti-blackness is as, like, I feel like it's the same as anti-trans rhetoric. I feel like the sentiment is the same. The level of hostility and the level of targeting is the same.
The difference is it's more likely that white trans person, let's think like what's her name? Jenner, I can't remember, Caitlyn. Right, like, so that's a trans person.
That's a rare
so
exception.
there, but we see in the queer community there's anti-blackness, even amongst like
But there's
marginalized
anti-homophobia
groups.
as well within the queer community. There's internalized homophobia as well.
But that's fine. But I'm saying, yes, we all have to, but there's still, even with all of that, they still have time to be anti-black.
But they still have time to be misogynist, like sexist as well.
But that's still, like, to me, anti-black crosses all groups, all levels, all marginalized groups. That's the thing. It's not like somebody is like misogynistic and not anti-black. It's not like they're just going to be one of those things. They might be homophobic, misogynistic, they might be a lot of things, but they're also going to be anti-black.
Not necessarily.
So
not necessarily.
Even if
not necessarily. Not necessarily. It depends on who you're talking about.
Most people, I would say, most people who, if they have prejudices, even if they have prejudices against queer people, they're definitely going to have prejudices against people of color, and definitely going to be anti-black.
Not necessarily.
I really think so.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
I really think so.
I don't.
I think so.
Okay, well, I mean, okay, look, I guess my thing is, I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, but I feel like it's not as big as black people think it is. Okay? And
have you been to India?
A lot of backlash for this comment, right?
Have you been to India?
We're not talking about their fucked up caste system right now.
No. I'm not talking about their caste system. I'm talking about I'm talking about the fact that they will bleach their skin.
I told you
they bleach their underarms.
Yes.
They have specific. One of the first ads I saw when I was in India was underarm cream, because you don't want dark underarms. Like, if you bleach all of the rest of your body to be clear, like, they have specific cream that's just for your underarms, because you don't want anybody to suspect that you have dark skin. Okay.
Look.
And so I'm just saying, when you look at it from a global perspective, there are people who are open to almost any other thing, but they will still have some sort of anti-blackness. And I think that's why, and I don't think that is not a small thing. Look, I think that it's pretty global.
All right, look, you're saying that, right? But for me, I think it's on the same level as internalized, what's the word? Patriarchy. Like, internalized sexism. Even women will be sexist towards themselves. Women will sit there and say, no, I can't do that because I'm a woman, or they will put limitations on themselves because they are so heavily indoctrinated. And I just feel like racism is just another, or anti-blackness is just another one of those things. It's not more than particularly. It just seems more than because it's, again, a convenient intersectional scapegoat for a lot of things. Very, very convenient. Next comes sexual orientation. Then comes gender identity. Right.
You think those are more discriminated against than blackness?
I'm saying in that order of target as a scapegoat. That's what I'm saying. So
you think that, but that's not even seen all the time. And I'm not encouraging people to hide themselves, but a queer white man, right, or a queer Latino man, okay, they could be sitting there. They don't have to show their queerness, okay? You don't have to show that. Like, even if you, like, and I'm not suggesting people hide, but what I'm saying is somebody doesn't necessarily look at somebody and be like, ew, they're queer. Not all the time. You know what I mean? We can't always tell who's queer, okay? If you go outside and you're open and you express yourself creatively and that looks queer and people judge that, that's one thing. But what I'm saying is you don't have to do that, okay? That is a personal way of expression. We have no way to disguise myself if I show up in a room, okay? And I will say that before I moved to Europe, I had higher expectations for Europeans. I really did. And I thought because a lot of, rhetoric in the United States about Europeans, particularly the white ones, is that they're more evolved than the American ones, right? They're more open. They are more, they haven't gone through the same process in the United States where they have been taught to hate Black people, right? Like, pretty much in the United States, like, that has been a really long, like, the racism there shaped white people into being more and more racist, right? That kind of violence didn't happen on European land. Like, they pushed all that violence on in Africa and all of the places they colonized. There was violence there, but it wasn't necessarily as violent in Europe, across Europe, as it was in the United States for Black people. So a lot of Black Americans, when they come to Europe, they think, oh, great, this is where white people aren't assholes, right? Like, this is where you can go and just be like, oh, okay, especially as an American, because they think America gives you privilege of the passport. At least it did before Donald Trump, right? So when now that I live here, I would tell you what, I like white people a whole lot less than I ever did. Like, honest to God, because not just because that they are anti-Black or racist. It's also because they deny it. They don't want to even acknowledge a little bit of prejudice. So it almost makes it worse. You know what I mean? Because I think in the United States, where we know that it's likely we're going to face racism, then you already kind of prepare yourself and you know how to navigate it. But here, culturally, they will, stare you in the face and tell you something isn't, that you're telling them, like, that's not okay. And they're like, oh no, it's fine, because culturally it's fine here. So, and I think that, and I don't want to say it's the difference between, and this might sound kind of bad, I don't know, I think it's one of the differences between coming to Europe as an immigrant for a lot of people of color and maybe being first generation. I think and I'm observing this from watching first generation children being raised, as I'm raising my child here as a Black American. I have a very different attitude about them and their space and their nationality versus, say, an immigrant coming here who's more thankful and more appreciative and more humble to their people who are saying fuck shit to them on a regular basis, right? They're teaching their children to absorb that as like a part of integration.
That you did a video about when she was standing next to a guy who made that
call her the N-word. Yeah. So, and so I put that video, I didn't take it down, but I put it friends only, because the guy who sent me the message, because he sent her, okay, so just for context, just explain, there is a friend of mine sent me a picture of a girl, a teenage girl. She's like 19 years old. She's standing with she's a beautiful Black girl, standing with 3 white Italian boys. And on the caption of the photo, it said that they can't see the N-word, okay? And so my friend sent her a message and was like, why? You know what I mean? What is that? And she was like, oh, I'm confident. We're confident. So I let them say things like that. She allows them to call her the N-word. because she says they're confident. And he's like, I don't even understand what that's supposed to mean, but don't do that. Like, don't let them call you that. And she was like, no, we love each other. I was like, pray that kind of love never. She's saying these are her really good friends who call her the N word on a regular basis, and she lets that happen. Now, the fact that it's so many levels. Like, this is a girl, like, she's from the continent, and what I have seen in so many instances is parents who are just scared. You know what I mean? A little bit of their status, a little bit of like what is acceptable to the people in power. And this is why I say minority, right? Because when you are in places, even in Africa, very few Africans have power and agency over their land because of Europe. So they made everyone a minority in power. And that's all that really fucking matters. Our global majority has not made a fucking difference. So when we start talking about the dynamics and power in Europe, I'm not sure how many people have I don't want to say, like, they don't have the wherewithal or the resources or the comfort to say the things they need to say. In Italy, you can be born and raised here and not have Italian citizenship. And you can't even apply until after you finish school, you're 18 years old, and then it's very expensive, right? And then they limit your job opportunities as an immigrant. That's all fucking anti-blackness to me. You know, there's certain things that Black people can't even, jobs they can't even have. It's not written, right? But when I talk to some of the Ethiopians or the Eritreans here, they're like, oh, we can't work in a bank. We can't get certain jobs because of our status. And so either they have to figure out ways to make their own businesses, which maybe is more advantageous for them, but like they have to create their own ways to make money. And that's not easy for everyone. So I know that there's intersectionality, and I know that there is so many other scapegoats and groups of people that are also under attack. But a lot of times, when you give those groups of people the option to be anti-Black, they will choose that if it means that they could win favor with the majority of people in power. And that's where the anti-Blackness comes from, because we look at how the elections went in the United States. We could have had Kamala Harris, but people did not, like, if we're honest, they did not want to have a Black woman in the fucking Oval Office.
It's more than that. Okay, Trump leveraged this when he said, "Who are you going to believe, the Black woman or the white guy?" What he did in that moment was
he pulled everybody's anti-Black card.
No, let me land. He was almost like strong-arming the public to be like, it's almost like he reminded me of a kind of overseer, like a plantation overseer in that moment, because what he was doing, like, when people are anti-Black, particularly in America or anywhere, it's a form of survival, right? It's a form of survival, because when you think about how immigrants came over to America and they were never like just automatically white, like even Irish were not accepted as white. There was no whiteness like that. There were just these different groups of people coming in, yeah, and then they were all split into, you know, different little like hierarchies or whatever. And what they noticed, what the Europeans noticed, because the Europeans came over, they didn't have those preconceived ideas about Black people. They just were just like, whatever, this is the land of opportunity. But when they saw how white Americans treated Black Americans, they felt that in order to survive, and again, like you're saying, with first generation immigrant parents, yeah, it's the same idea, that they don't want to upset the status quo, they don't want to fuck up their own money, they don't want to mess up their opportunities. They've come a long way from the homeland, right, to make this work. So they're not, why would they associate with a group of people who have been marginalized and, well, yeah, basically shat on, right?
But they did at first. And like, that's the thing, they did at first.
They did. What do you mean they did at first?
But Irish and Black people in the United States worked alongside each other, right? Yeah. And so did Italians, right? Like, all of those people, like, they were all in the slums together. Mm-hmm. They were all like working and living together. Mm-hmm. They got to know Black people, yeah. But whiteness prevailed, yeah, right? Yeah. Now, this isn't, I don't think that it's just because of the power dynamic and the ease associated with it. Because, well, maybe they weren't so smart to understand how they could have sided with the majority. But anyway, whatever. Maybe they weren't smart.
No,
but
they weren't because they were in survival mode. They
but
came
they
over in
weren't
survival
smart.
mode.
They also weren't smart from the sense of how in Europe, okay, since way before the slave trade and all of those things started to happen, when Europeans started to interact with other groups of people across the world, okay, particularly Africans, they wrote freaking theories, right, on how to enslave brown people. They associated brown people with lower beings.
Where are you getting
Okay,
this from?
it's documented. Like when they started visiting Africa, they didn't just enslave people. We know, like we were talking about before when we talked about the forgetfulness tree. They were writing out how to do all of these things, how to manipulate.
No, that was
how
later.
To do this.
That was much later. That was. What about the documentation from like the 13th, 12th century?
I mean, Plato was writing for European superiority before Christianity.
Okay.
So I mean, like all of these things that they did were for European superiority in some way.
No.
So
Okay. Herodotus was a Greek man who went to Africa and he praised Africa. There's another one, I can't remember his name, a famous one, a Greek philosopher as well. There's quite a few who and a lot of Islamic writers as well, and even English.
And we don't know any of their names because we have Plato and Socrates that ended up leading all of those things far more in the, like, regardless of even if they did not influence enough to create who created the systems in Europe and the mentalities around people of color. They were probably like, the fuck, why? I think that the Irish people now look back and be like, we made some bad choices. But because they were also colonized and they were also subjugated in certain ways to Britain. And I think that's the other thing. A lot of the Europeans that came over from Europe at that time, America wasn't America. It was still a colony of Britain, right? Like, so it wasn't like they were coming seeking freedom in the same way of, like, I don't know, like the way they paint the picture. It was just like they were moving to one of Europe's colonies, right? So they were coming to a colony that they were expecting to still be the same as there. So I don't think that they came and was like, oh, we're going to be subjugated. They came and was like confused to me. Like, that's what I think. And then when they got the opportunity, when they realized like, oh yeah, finally my whiteness is being recognized, then of course they jumped on that boat. But why? Why is it that you can keep saying these things about their lack of humanity as something that's justifiable? Because it seems primarily a European thing that we've all adapted.
Don't lose sight of the fact that racism is equal to any other kind of bigotry. Is equal to any other kind of bigotry in my eyes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Again, I take you back to the example of anti-transness, and which I find particularly venomous. I find it really, really. I'm often surprised by the level of hatred that those people receive, right? And again, it's very prevalent in communities that are marginalized already. For example, the black community, right? Or women. You know, you have these like TERF women. Anyone who feels like their position is going to be threatened, because this whole system is rigged in such a way that everyone is tense with survival mentality. Each person for their own, right? Like there's nothing harmonious about society, though. There's nothing conducive to harmony in society, in Western society, because that would be detrimental to capitalism ultimately, right? Because then that would lead to socialism, which we can't have, right? Even though Scandinavian countries exercise socialism very well, and that brings me to another point. Do you think that the immigrant status limitation thing that you mentioned in Italy differs from country to country in Europe? Because, for example, like in the UK, I mean, I think that they're tightening up the laws a bit now, but they're still very lax compared to, say, Italy when it comes to immigration. Like, if you come to the UK and you work for whatever the time limit is, or you jump through the hoops, you can then get your citizenship and be left alone, right?
How long does it take you to get citizenship in?
I think I want to say 5 years, but don't quote me on that. I'll need to check that.
Are you, if you're born to immigrant parents in Britain, are you considered a citizen?
Yeah, that was my case. Yeah.
Okay.
You just
So like, I mean, I know that birthplace citizenship is not everywhere in Europe. I don't think France has it. I think in certain, like if you're from one of the colony, like I don't think like it's, if you don't have like a French parent or something, I don't necessarily know that your children are considered French. At least that's what my ex told me. And that's the same thing here in Italy. I think that in every place, obviously it's different. Every country is different. How they deal with immigration is different, and their openness to it is different. Their history, you know, a lot of times, you know, particularly here in Italy, they are still wounded that they didn't colonize the way like the rest of Europe did, you know, like they failed at colonization. And so sometimes I feel like in Italy, particularly, they have a lot of that still wounded, like we're not like we need to show our strength in some sort of way. And like immigrants are weak, so they always find the weakest thing because you know. But I don't know that it's the same. I do think there's I mean, we obviously see anti-immigration issues across Europe, particularly right now with all the politics and the rise of the far right or whatever, the more right than the right. So that are like, you know, so I mean, it's obviously an issue everywhere. And when I look particularly at Italy and how they even do citizenship here, Americans, right, who might have a grandma who is Italian, okay, never been to Italy, but if they can prove like their grandma was an Italian who was born in Italy and decided like didn't give up her citizenship or whatever, they can get Italian citizenship. Know nothing about the culture, don't speak the language. It's easier for them to get citizenship than it is for me to get citizenship living here, raising Italian children and all of that. So like it's very
it's xenophobic. That's the word.
It's xenophobic in that
it's not
way.
Automatically anti-black. Okay, this is what.
No, that isn't. But the fact that even when you break down marginalized groups like trans, right? Black trans women are the
least protected, definitely.
The least protected and the most unalived, right? The most likely to be unalived. And that's also one of the things that it's hurtful, because what it shows, because to me that's just an extension of Black women, right? Like, so that's just the extension of how you treat Black women. It's hard for me to separate that idea. That trans woman is not just the extension of how you treat Black women. And so, because for me, I see that all as a part of that. And because Black women in the hierarchy of the world, of the race hierarchy that we have created, the race, patriarchal, gender, that we have created, are at the bottom of that hierarchy, right? So, because we're Black, we're women, and we don't have the social capital of whiteness or maleness. And that's why more Black women and women in general are becoming more educated, right? Black women in the United States are now the most educated group in the US, right? And that is because of lack of power. And that's the only way that we know how to elevate ourselves. That's the only way women can elevate themselves. And that's why they try and take those things away from us. So when we start looking at how we respond to that, you start to see all of the dynamics of how power is what we have to try and be like the majority of, more than anything else. And I think that when we start seeing how women are reacting to things, then we know, like, we see all of the anti things. Yes, there's anti-gender, there's anti this, there's anti that. But I feel like a white trans person, trans woman would point to me before they give up their whiteness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
And that's what it comes down to. And that's what the anti-blackness is. It's not to say that everybody is going to do everything, but when it comes down to the choices, if somebody goes, well, you know what? You're a white trans person. You can go stand over there with those black people, right? Those black women, or we'll give you the opportunity to pretend you're not trans or whatever you are and stand over here with us white people. Most people are going to choose that side, and that's why we say anti-blackness is global.
Okay, well, I think this is the problem with this. It's a sweeping overgeneralization that really irritates me, because there's so many nuances that are being
I'm gonna tell you what, when you watch it happens,
I see the opposite happening. I mean, I've seen a white trans woman go to the black community and be welcomed by the black community and feel like that's the only space they can be themselves. I've seen that. Okay.
And that's fine. And then
when that white trans woman goes to the white side, right, there will always be someone there to remind them that they are not a cis woman, that they are trans, that they are less than in the hierarchy. There will always be a white person to do that. So that's what I mean. It doesn't matter about whether we're talking about racism or anti-transness. It's all bigotry, and there will always be a group of people to remind you of your social standing or your social differences, regardless of what that difference is.
And that's fine. But she would still choose whiteness.
Well, fine, but she would still
and that's the anti-blackness.
Yeah, but
that is the thing that people, like black people, are tired of, right? Especially in the United States. Yes, we accept you. Yes, come in group will protect you, blah, blah. But when it comes down to our protection, we don't get the same thing in return. And that's why that is the thing. They will use us, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why it's anti-black.
Okay,
because
so does that mean
when we tell you, hey, this is what we need. This is where we at. We need this from you. Then they're like, ooh, you know what? That's gonna be hard for me. And so I think that is why. And we see it over and over again in different instances. And it's fine. Yes, there is all kinds of xenophobia. There's all kinds of things people will come up with. All kinds. I mean, I just feel like I was watching something on TikTok, and it was this man who was getting pulled over by immigration, and he was going on. He's like, they only, saw his last name, right? If you just looked at him, I don't know, I wouldn't have thought anything about him not being a white man, whatever. But his name was something Arab. And he got, I don't know, pulled over, whatever, arrested, and he voted for Trump, right? Mm-hmm. So many people that this man has said, I hate you. He's literally said, I hate you. He had a Muslim ban the last time he was in office. And Muslims went out in droves to vote for him. Mm-hmm. He told everybody what he was going to do. Mm-hmm. Latinos, Muslim people, exactly. Black people were screaming.
So what's your point? What's your point?
We are in danger.
What is your point?
We said he will put us in danger. Don't do it. We have rallied for all of you. We have fought for immigration in the United States. We fought against the Muslim ban. We did all of this. We were going on about Palestine and Gaza, right? We were, trying to hold Kamala Harris to she even said she would call for a ceasefire. She said those things. Trump never said that. He never said any of those things. A man whose record tells you Black people told the entire fucking world what we needed, what we couldn't deal with anymore. And what did they do? They didn't give a fuck. Right. So I will say that when it comes down to the choices, they're very simple. And I hate to, and I try to be really neutral on certain things, but this one, I can't. I will say that yes, anti-Blackness is global. When it comes down to it, they are going to, more than likely, not everybody, but the biggest majority is going to choose what they think is going to make them safe. Yep. Even though if the least people are safe, you are never safe. But since they keep seeing us as people who don't matter, I mean, what else is it? Because I
don't think it's seeing us as people who don't matter. And when you talk about anti-blackness, are you saying that, like, when you talk about how these marginalized groups use the black community for safety until the rubber hits the road and they just skedaddle, right? Are you saying then that African immigrants who do that, because remember we talked about that last time, are they also anti-black? Of course not.
Probably, yeah.
No, they're not. So so that's what I'm saying. You can't just tar everything with the anti-black brush, because, like,
listen to me.
Not everything is anti-black. Like,
listen to me. Black people can be anti-black. Okay.
I know.
No, and this is the thing. Even in black people being anti-black, okay? Black people can be anti-black when it's not just about racism, okay? It's about culture. It's about, like, how you wear your hair. It's about how you like. There's so many so many things about being anti-black. The fact that when someone looks at me and be like, "Oh, you look biracial," that's anti-black to me, because I don't look biracial. I look like a black person. You know what I mean? Just because my hair texture is this or my eye color is that doesn't make me any less black. You know what I mean? So even how we do featureism and, like, all of that is anti-black. It doesn't have to be someone like, "Oh, I hate black people." It's just the fact that you limit blackness into your idea and your little jar of what it should be.
I think the language around it is so important. And anti-black, I keep saying anti like an American. Anti-black is really...
Am I influencing your accent?
Yeah. It's just infusing the mentality of younger generations with negativity that doesn't need to be there. I mean, if we just eased off the anti-black rhetoric for a while, yeah, and let things develop and unfold, then the younger generations will develop solutions to these long-standing problems. Just like Traore, who is a new generation of president, I always bring him into the conversation, right, who is not... He has not allowed the previous generations, like that boomer generation's greed to affect the way he thinks. He's thinking for himself. I mean, he just laid the first brick for, like, free housing for every, like, he wants no Burkinabe person to be homeless. So he's doing a whole thing where everyone gets housing. So
he is in his country. That's lovely. But
let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, you distracted me now. You distracted me.
You just paused.
I was gathering my thoughts.
How do I know?
Because I was still talking.
You paused.
That was a New York pause. Just to clarify on my point. Yeah, you're saying that these African immigrants who come over and use the black community are anti-black, and then you then went on to say that there's different levels and layers, like, you know, whether it's featureism, texturism, cultural, whatever. Like, you're saying that that's all anti-blackness, but what I'm saying is they are not. It doesn't all automatically equal anti-blackness, and we have to stop lumping everything together in that group, because then that stops us from thinking beyond that. It just makes us think, oh yeah, well, this is anti-black, the world's anti-black, so, you know, I'll just...
The problem I have with your theory is that we are not taught properly. We are taught from a Eurocentric perspective. Yeah. We have no balance in that. So there is no way that any black person, whether you're from the continent or whatever, and even in the continent, for the most part, you have a Eurocentric, like, education, right? So there is no way that younger generations are going to develop the wherewithal to not be subjugated in the future. Because if we look at what's happening right now politically, okay, what's happening right now politically on a global scale, that is the direction in which they want to take us again.
I disagree.
And yours...
Because, again, look at Traore. He grew up... He's what? I don't even know how old he is. He must be, what? Slightly older than me. Late 30s.
You're talking about one man.
Wait. That's an example. He's a microcosm. Because Burkina Faso doesn't even have a river. They have no access to water. It's a landlocked country, right?
I know.
Up until a few years ago, they were not even on the map. I remember looking them up a few years ago, and it was like one of the poorest, blah, 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 in Africa. And so... if he could grow up in that environment and still come out realizing who the oppressor really is and what needs to be done to undo it, then I'm saying the same applies with raising our children or the next generation to not just view everything as anti-black and
How
immediately.
do we know how he was raised? How do we know anything about his education? I don't. I mean, I will say this. I will say that yes, there are radicals and revolutionaries in almost every place. Like there are. And a lot of them get snubbed out by the people next to them. Okay? So yes, he has managed to stay alive to this point because people are constly trying to get rid of him.
They just tried to, didn't they? They just tried.
They just tried to kill him, right?
6 Westerners.
And so you're like, when you tell the story of him, it's like, oh, kumbaya, like the world is just watching him like, oh.
No,
that's not what's happening.
I'm not saying.
They are anti him.
I know.
Like even within Africa, they are letting people in through borders to get into to try and unalive
I
this
understand.
man. So what I'm saying though is there is a effort, and there has been an effort for a really long time, and to pretend or think that without properly educating our children, okay, properly showing them and giving them the strength of themselves, the guidance of spirit, like all of those things that are for us. Now, I'm not talking about Christianity and that shit. I'm talking about the things that are for us. And most Black people are not doing that for their kids. And I will say that I don't see what you see in the disappearing of it all, because I have small kids right now, and I don't see the disappearing or the acceptance and the kumbaya-ness yet, because they're learning what their parents are teaching them, right? And yes, you can come out of that, but what damage do our children have emotionally and mentally from dealing with them while they're going through their shit, if we're not protecting and teaching them that this is not the way it is? And I feel like that most people just want to ignore, like you're saying, like if we just let them grow and they'll,
No, that's not what I'm saying. Listen. I equip my daughter with knowledge and history, Black history. Like she's like an encyclopedia at this point. She'll tell you, she the other day she told me the year that Mansa Musa was born. Like she goes off and does her own research. She really enjoys learning about her own history, right? So and she knows what racism is, and I've explained to her how to deal with it. She's come to me with things, and I equip her. We have talks, we hug it out, whatever she needs. So I'm not saying that we ignore it. I'm not saying that at all. That would be backwards.
We have to bring revolutionaries and radicals.
Yes, revolutionaries and radicals, but also you have to bring a mentality of, I can overcome this. This is not really going to define me. It doesn't matter what they say. Because again, if Africa's so insignificant and Africa's so corrupt and bad, then why are they actively trying to snub him out, right? Why are they actively trying to exploit still our resources? So that shows you that we are actually more empowered than the narrative has told. So then it shouldn't matter what they try and put on you. You don't have to accept and absorb that. You don't have to be like, oh, the world is so anti-Black. The world really hates me. You could feel the same way if you were a white gay person, because homosexuality was still only it was a criminal law up until the 50s. That's later than slavery. I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing the two. I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying that it was illegal to be gay up until the 50s. Imagine that, right? Imagine. So I guess what I'm saying is like those feelings, those social sentiments are still residual in society. And I mean,
I understand what you say.
Look at the language use of the word, like the F word, right? And there was all these slurs. There's always been these slurs in hip hop and in every aspect of society. There's always been slurs, and like, oh, it was even an insult as a kid, like, oh, you're so gay. This, like, so, and questions of what it means to be masculine have always been pitted against gayness and feminine gayness. So that's still something that is still ongoing. That's still something that they're trying to put.
No, I understand. And I don't think that Black people and Black Americans haven't limited themselves. They recognize, and that's it. It's more of recognizing how you need to move in a world that is anti-Black. It's not saying that
anti-Black.
Huh?
Stop saying anti-Black, please.
Yeah, okay. It's how you need to move in a world that's anti-Black, right?
Like, I just said stop using that word.
Why?
Because it's negative and it's not true. It's not automatically true.
It's true.
A lot of what you've said, a lot of the examples you've given are xenophobic.
I mean, gay people got more rights before gay people were recognized before segregation was over in the United States, right? So you're saying it was illegal until like the 1950s. Segregation ended in 1964, 65. Okay, so even gay people got more rights before black people did.
Only just. But look at what
United
Stonewall did to help with that, to help with the equal footing, right? You don't know that? Stonewall? Stormy DeLavery?
Stonewall what?
Stormy DeLavery. She was a trans.
Oh, Stormy. Yes. Okay.
Activist. And a lot of what they did helped black rights across the board, not just within the LGBTQ community. Not many people know that. So there was a hand-in-hand thing. So you talk about Kumbaya, yeah. Maybe it's because I'm an Aquarius and I have this altruistic view of like helping humanity move forward, but I just see that. I see the opportunities for that. I don't see.
I don't think that I would love to help humanity move forward, but I don't think humanity can move forward without facing humanity.
Yeah, and so we faced it. But you keep saying anti-black.
When did we face it?
You keep saying anti-black.
When did humanity face it?
With acknowledging it.
When?
Making slavery illegal, right?
You just want to argue with me. When did?
I'm telling you. Making.
Ooh, wait. I need to know
in the UK.
How did they acknowledge?
Okay, so in the UK, you're asking me. I'm telling you. In the UK, I don't know what it is in America if they have this.
Okay.
But you have protected characteristics. Is that a thing in America?
It used to be before Trump.
Yikes. Well, we have that. Okay, so.
Until but they just removed.
Even to the point that the leader of the Tory party, the most white, posh-toff, upper-lipped party in the UK, is headed by a black woman. Now, yes, that is riddled with caveats. I mean, I do think they are using her for their own gain. But
is this that one black woman who?
Yes, I think they are using her. But it doesn't matter. The point is,
you cannot use Candace Owens, British Candace Owens, as an example.
I'm just saying that the fact that they even give her the floor is more than what America has done.
Of course they give her the floor.
It's more than what America has done for Kamala Harris, right? For Kamala Harris. That's more. Like, I'm just saying. They wouldn't give Kamala, a Democrat, a chance, but if you're conservative, if you believe in our political philosophy, we're more likely to give you the chance.
If you're anti-black, which she is.
Okay, she's problematic.
You're
she's problematic.
using the British Candace Owens as your fucking you don't want to die on that hill. You do not want to use the British
I don't want to die
Owens. You want to delete all of that.
Yeah, I don't want to
because they will come for you. I'm telling you right now that you do not want to use her as the example. Because that's just like making the overseer a black person. And you're like, well, it's better if she whips you than if NASA does it. Like, are you joking? What are you talking about right now?
Yeah, you're right.
I would rather have it be a white person spouting this bullshit than somebody who looked like me, because they use us to justify their shit.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I said they are using her, but I'm just saying, because she has a protected characteristic, that is not something that can be used against her. Her skin is not something that can be used against her. Maybe this was a bad example, okay?
Not very. I love you, though.
I love you, too. We're not perfect, okay? No one's perfect. I'm trying to...
So this is the thing, okay? And I think this is the misunderstanding. Black Americans do not walk in the world angry or like saying like, okay, everyone hates me, like individually, right? We don't walk individually going, everybody hates me, right? Mm-hmm. But there is this recognition to not be surprised, right?
Yeah,
when you are doing things and you know that there's an underlying bullshit, mm-hmm. when you show up in your skin, just show up in your skin. Mm. Like, even the thing that I said to you, like that girl who is here in Italy, who I was like, I didn't want to call her a friend because I was like, the fuck did you send me this message, right? That was fucking anti-black. But she's got black children. She's got black grandchildren. She's a white woman, right? But she sends me a picture of some white women that she wants me to be excited about. Mm. And I'm like, it doesn't do nothing for me. They're pictures of funny looking white women. I don't put white women on my wall. We had that discussion, right? Like, I'm a black woman. My partner might be, if this not family, ain't no strange white women going on my walls. So I was like, I just don't put strange white women on my wall. So I mean, I don't have an opinion. And she was just like, well, they're not white. And, you know, one of them is Puerto Rican and one is Portuguese. And I was like, so a white Puerto Rican. And I was like, and Portuguese, you realize started the slave trade. And she said something like, oh, yeah, they would have put you on a boat.
Yeah, that's
anti-black.
So out of pocket.
That is simple. I have known this woman for 20, not 20 years, but for at least 10 years, 10 or 15 years. And she's never said something like this to me before. And like I said, although there have been things that I asked her that I feel like, particularly around her son and his wife, who is a dark-skinned Black woman, and she doesn't care for her. And I'm just like, but why? You know, and I think it's colorism, you know what I mean? But she won't say that out loud. She knows where to stop. But she thought that was funny what she said to me. But that showed me that even though I have known this girl, for a woman who is like 10 years older than me, for a long time, she is fucking anti-Black. Like, even though I suspected certain things, she never said it, and I was giving her the benefit of the doubt, okay? I had another friend. I had a wig on one day because I dyed my hair blue, and then I tried to take the blue out, and it turned green. And so I put a wig on. I never wear wigs, right? But I wanted to cover, because it was Joker green. It was not cute. And so a friend of mine who I met, I do this thing, like, I meet people when I travel, and like I will have friends or like associates that, you know, we message each other every now and then. I met this guy in Costa Rica, a gay white man, okay, who was stuck in Turkey at the time because it was like COVID, all this stuff, whatever. It was after COVID. But he got stuck in Turkey because he didn't have his visas and this, that, and the other. Anyway, he calls me on video call one day randomly, and I'm wearing this wig, which everybody told me was cute, right? He was like, what do you have on your head? And I was like, oh, you know, I'm holding my phone, you know, and I was like, oh, like, I'm trying to explain to him my hair dilemma. And he was like, you know what? You look like a typical Nigerian N-word. I hung up the phone. I am telling you, there have been so many, and this is just moving. It's just like, you're not surprised when it shows the fuck up. Gay, okay, HIV positive. He has so many marginalized ticks, you want to say, anti-Black. So suddenly, because I don't even know what that meant. Like, honestly, I was like, I look like a typical Nigerian N-word. Like, he said the N-word with an ER. You know what I mean? So I was just like, I've talked to this man, I don't know how many times on the phone, supported him, like, you know, through his emotional crises. He was abused by his boyfriend. He was like stranded in Portugal. Someone stole his passport, like all kinds of stuff. I supported this man through for years. Okay. And then all in all, I'm just a typical Nigerian N-word in the end, because I put a wig on my head. These are not atypical situations. And I think that one of the things for us as Black people is always trying to be like, oh, let me give you the benefit of the doubt till you prove. You know what I mean? That is what we do. And so many times we get burned and buried. And so by people that we have trusted. And so I think that moving in this world with the underlying knowledge that shit could come up, it may never come up, but it can. And to recognize it and being able to be like, oh, okay, it finally showed up. Yeah, but listen, I thought you were different, but there it is.
Don't. I feel like, okay, what you explained, right? That guy was just a racist. That's the bottom line. He was just a racist, and you shouldn't have been surprised. Like, there probably were signs before. But what I'm saying is, it's like, imagine, like, if you haven't seen the film Stud Life, you should watch that film, because...
Okay, I'm gonna have to find it.
There's an example in it where there's a guy who's gay, and he's talking to this guy online. They meet up for a rendezvous, shall we say. And then afterwards, the guy beats him up and calls him a faggot, right? Calls him a homo or whatever. So, homophobic. Just purely internalized homophobia, right? You wouldn't say that's anti-gay. You would just say that's homophobia because it is. It's not like a supercharged version of homophobia.
But we don't have blackophobic.
It's just homophobia. So what I'm saying
but
is,
we don't have blackophobic.
What I'm saying is, when someone is racist, it's just racism. It's not like a supercharged version of racism. It's not like anti-black. I feel like when people talk about anti-blackness, they're supercharging it with like they're putting it on a pedestal of like supreme discrimination, and it's just racism. It's always been that bad. It's always been that bad. I'm saying it is bad. I'm saying racism is bad, but it's not like you're putting too much on it. You're making it more important than it is. You're making it the biggest bigotry out of all of them. When I'm saying
why shouldn't it be?
It's not.
Because you know what? No, but listen.
What do you mean, why shouldn't it be?
Because the Holocaust is the biggest Holocaust we ever talk about, right? There have been Holocausts in Africa. There have been Holocausts in the United States.
Yeah.
But when white people have a Holocaust,
I know.
Right? We all have to, but they don't recognize any other Holocaust. Okay, they really don't.
Okay,
they don't even call it that. No. They don't even call it that. Okay, they don't call the internment camps and the things that happen to anybody else the same way they do what happens to white people. Even right now, when we see what's happening in the United States politically, none of this stuff is new.
Agreed, but it doesn't just apply to us.
But it's not happened to white people in the way that it's happened. So now it has a different thing. And what I want to say about anti-blackness, before, just based on what you were talking about before, and why it is what it is because everything has hierarchies in our fucking world. Everything.
Yeah, but you don't have to subscribe to them. You don't have to.
We do. We live in them.
You don't have to enforce them and uphold them.
Whether I subscribe to it or not, I live in it. I live in a patriarchy as a woman. I don't subscribe to patriarchy, but I understand how it works and understand how I have to work within it. So it's like every woman, okay, even before women were allowed, I guess, some levels of freedom, right? And you were stuck with a man. Like there was a period of time women were stuck with men, okay? What did we do? We had to learn how to live with inside those situations. You might have an abusive man. You might have a man who has 3 or 4 families you're not happy about. You had to learn how to live and work with inside of that for survival's sake, okay?
Some did.
And
some did, but some
did. Some didn't survive.
Some said no. Some said, fuck this, I'm going to change it.
Very few. Because very few had the resources.
But those few are the ones who changed it. Bottom line.
They changed, but that's the thing. We've been fighting for change for all this time. And I think the lack of accepting that these hierarchies are real, because we accepted that hierarchy. That's the only reason it even changed, is we accepted that was a hierarchy. And if we don't accept that racism also has hierarchies, because there are privileges, like there's privileges within being a Latino, right? Like you have a white Latino versus a Black or African Latino. Okay, there are hierarchies in that. There's hierarchies in every aspect, and that's what's sweeping across the board. No. It doesn't even matter if you are Black in Brazil or Black in, you know what I mean, like Panama. It's across the board.
It depends. And so, you can't generalize. You can't.
But you do all the time.
What?
We generalize with patriarchy. We generalize with feminism. Why is it that when you come down to saying about Black people, then we have to say, oh, in case
yeah, because there's differences. It's not. That's what I'm saying. It's not a universal experience.
But it is a universal experience. It's just our attitudes about it that are different. It's the attitudes that we decide to accept that are different. So Black Americans have been fighting this fight for a long time, whereas other people didn't realize they needed to fight. They were under the same subjugation, under the same sort of like ideologies, under the same prejudices, under the same colorism and featureism and all of that, but they didn't call it that. And that's the difference. I think that the only difference is Black Americans are saying this should exist. And I know that whether I go to Panama or I go to, like Italy, or I go to Africa, there are hierarchies. Like someone told me the other day, if I moved to Africa, they would consider me white. And I was just like, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, that's wild to me. So we can't pretending the hierarchies that have shaped our world. I don't have to participate in it. I might in my house, you know what I mean, have a certain way I move, I talk to my children a certain way, I do certain things, but socially, society, when I walk outside, do I recognize that, they might ask me for the receipt at the grocery store from another store because I walked in with the bag, like, oh, I want to see the receipt. See if you stole something from someplace that ain't even here. Excuse me? You know what I mean?
And
Why are you asking me? So it's and in they put, most of the security people are black. So they put that face, right, to carry out their orders by someone who looks like me. Or I think looks like me. They might not think they look like me. You know what I mean? But whatever. So it's just...
Yeah, and I understand all of that. And those microaggressions, I understand all of that. But like I'm saying, there are microaggressions for queer people as well, every single day. There are...
But that's fine,
as a queer
and
person,
it's true.
As a visibly queer presenting person, I'm not talking about myself, but I'm talking about more like particularly male to female queerness. There's a moment where people look at them and you see that flicker of judgment before they compose themselves and act politely. I'm talking about in the UK specifically, right? You notice things like that. And that's the same experience that black people have sometimes. Sometimes you show up in your skin and there's a moment where you see a moment of judgment in the person's eyes, and then they decide to mask it. They may not decide to mask it. They may decide to be rude to you after that, but either way, you've seen it, right? And you clock
That's
it.
fine, and nobody cares about that. You look at me funny, I look at you funny, and we move on. As long as you leave me the fuck alone. And I think that, but the thing of it is, and regardless, yes, there are prejudices across the board.
For everything.
There people come up with all kinds of things to be prejudiced
people
against.
Who are like overweight, bigger than normal, whatever normal is, they go through a lot as well. I'm just saying.
No, that's true. And I'm not saying that there's not there's fat phobia. There is, anti whatever, like all of these phobia. And like, even the idea, when you say phobia, you're not scared. Like, it's actually anti-fat. It's anti-gay. It is. You're not fearful.
Anti sounds so aggressive and hostile.
It
sounds so...
Because people are aggressive towards you.
Yeah, but using that language perpetuates the sentiment. It gives it more power. It gives it more power.
No, it's telling them what they are.
It gives it more power. I don't want to hear that.
It should be powerful.
I don't want to hear that someone's anti-black.
It should be powerful. It should be powerful. And it should be powerful in the sense of saying you're anti this, you're anti-gay, you're anti... This homophobia sounds soft to me. It's like, oh, I'm scared. Oh, he might... What are you scared of? What fear?
There is
like
a fear.
Arachnophobia. I'm scared of spiders, right? Like arachnophobia.
There is a fear. There is a fear.
Gloriophobia.
There is a fear around racism. There is.
It's not fear. It's ignorance and hate. And I don't think that anyone's scared when they're out hunting black or queer people.
They are scared of them having the same rights. They're scared of them stepping into their power.
They're scared
of them being equal. They're scared of them outshining them.
They have been taught, listen, this is the thing, because they don't even know. They don't even know what the fuck they're talking about half the time when they're like, oh, I'm homophobic, anti-gay, whatever they are. Like, they don't even know what they're talking about half the time. They don't have any facts about gay people. They don't have any facts about fat people. They don't have any facts to substantiate their trans hate, right? They make it all up. They make it all up, and they follow a narrative that makes sense to them because they want to be hateful.
No,
right?
They want to be superior. They want to feel superior. That's why.
But then it comes down to it's a choice then, okay? If you are choosing to hunt people, to try and hurt them, to do all of these things, that is a choice, and it's and it's violent. Yes. And it doesn't give it any less power by making soft words for it. I feel like we need to make harder words for things more often and make people feel uncomfortable with being that way. If you're anti-gay, and because what do gay people scare you about? Like, homophobia is like a word that makes no sense to me. Like, you're homophobic, you're anti-gay, you're anti-trans, you're anti these people.
Listen, all of those phobias stem from fear, because fear of them taking what I've got, fear of them threatening my social standing. For example, TERF women, how they feel about trans
Who
women.
told them that though?
It doesn't matter. The point is, it's fear-based. Ignorance, yes, but it's fear-based. They can all be traced back to fear, right?
And it can be traced down to the society that has been created to tell people that, because without the education, without the ideologies, without those things, then what is there to be fearful of? They don't even know what they're scared of. Like, if you ask a man who's homophobic, what are you afraid of from another man? Being treated like a man. He's afraid of that man treating him like he treats women.
That's thing.
That's what he's afraid
of. That's one thing. That's not the only thing. That's not the only thing. It's one thing. It's one aspect.
That's one aspect, but for me, they're just gay. Like, any man who says they're homophobic is gay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So there's a fear of things coming to the surface that they don't want to deal with. And it's the same
then society, then our social structure is what's created that. And so then why don't we put the labels associated with the social structures as they are? And we cannot pretend that everything will just if we don't change society and start pointing the fingers at all of the things and calling it what it is, then how is it going to change? Because I feel like all marginalized people are constantly trying to placate like everybody else. Is trying to convince you that we are like, we're queer but we're okay, or I'm black but I'm okay. Like, that's what we've been doing. And it's not worked, right? Because society has created certain structure. And that's what I'm saying. When you say like, oh, you don't have to be that way. Of course I don't have to be that way. But then I have to deal with the world as it is. I have to fight anti-blackness already with my kids, right? Like there's like, he's the only technically black kid in his class. He's not the darkest skinned kid in his class, because there's Asian kids who are darker than him in his class. But like, one day we're walking home and we saw this African man, and he was dressed in all black, right? And so my son goes, he's all black. And I was like, yeah, he's wearing all black. He goes, not just what he's wearing, his skin too. He's all black. And I was like, I'm like, well, so are you. And his black is no different than your black. So I don't know why you're pointing that out to me. Why did you feel the need to tell me that? You know what I mean? Like, so if we are not paying attention, then they're shaping our kids again and again and again. The society that we live in is shaping them. And if we don't do things to shape society differently, if we don't say what it is, call the names, the things, the names that they are, then it's going to be us continuously trying to dig up our past, trying to see what they buried, trying to see what they hide. Go ahead.
Let me draw your attention. Let me draw your memory back to the 70s, right? Let's remind ourselves of some of the rhetoric that was happening at the time, okay? We had the Black Panther Party in full swing. We had Angela Davis, right? We had James Brown. We had the whole Say It Loud movement, right? Black and proud. Why don't we call that pro-black and focus on being pro-black rather than saying, oh, the world is so anti-black? Why do we not change the focus? Like, yes, the world can be racist, but we are pro-black as black people. We are pro-black, and we look for the things that support our blackness. End of story. Why can it not be pro-black? Why does the catchphrase have to be anti-black? Because I feel like that's so negative, and the way the brain works, do you know about the reticular activating system?
No, you can tell me.
Okay, well that's more visual. That's like,
okay.
It's basically like the reticular activating system is it comes up in manifestation as well, because it's science, for those who love science-backed manifestation. It's basically where the brain sees a lot of images a day. Like, you see like over 50,000 images a day. Your brain has to prioritize and filter and decide what is important to hold on to and remember. And I don't know what the auditory equivalent of that is, but that's what I'm talking about right here. Okay, when you continually say anti-black, 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 it just sets this almost melancholic precedent for someone who is black to feel like defeated before they even get out into the world, that you've got to expect all these things. You've got to expect all these barriers. I'm not saying you can't prepare for barriers and prepare for disappointment, because any person has to do that anyway. But I'm saying, if that person feels that the world is against them because that's all they've been growing up hearing from their own community, that the world is anti-black, 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 just anti-black, drilling it into their head, what hope does that person have of being,
plenty.
look how many people
have
selves? reaching their best potential.
That's not
it's
true.
Capped. It's going to be capped because you've already, the auditory activating system has grabbed onto what the recurring theme is. That is anti-black, 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 anti-black. They're going to internalize that. They're going to hate themselves, and they're going to be fearful of others treating them that way as well. Whereas if the message was pro-black, let's be pro-black, like the Black Panthers did with their children, then that is better. That raises up people like the Angela Davises, like the Marcus Garveys, like the people who...
And what happened to them?
Okay, yeah, but I'm just saying that obviously that was a different time. That was a different time.
No, but it's not. And this is the other thing. Black Americans have not let these ideas limit us, right? I don't think, in general.
I don't know.
Not everybody, but that's not that, like, as a group, right? As a group, we're getting educated, especially Black women who are the most marginalized group in the United States, who have had to fight the most to get those rights. I think it's a recognition. That's it. Because even when you talk about the period, when you start talking about like pro-black, because there was I'm Black and I'm proud and blah, blah, blah. And the re-acceptance of our hair and all of this. And then what did white people do? What did white people do? They start coming, well, why do they get to be pro-black and we can't be pro-white? When they had the KKK and all of these things.
That's the argument right there.
No, but but you can't even say, then they put that limit on our joy. Like, that is the thing over and over again that they have tried to. What happened to the Black Panther Party?
I know.
Okay. What happened after the Black Panther Party to the Black community?
I know.
Okay. So, like, we can't just have, like, this moment in time that was, like, so it was important.
I'm saying go back to that.
It was a spark.
I'm saying
but
go
what
back
I'm
to
saying is the government, especially in the United States, have done everything. Every time Black people try to have something where they were like, leave us alone. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to make our own communities. We're going to keep our shit to ourselves. They come to fuck us up. And it's that idea of not saying these motherfuckers are anti-Black that kept us getting
That's not going to help us.
No.
Is it going to help? Look, the KKK made it very clear that they were anti-Black. Did that change anything?
The government did it. It wasn't just the KKK. It wasn't just private citizens.
But the fact is, a rose by any other name is still a rose, right? So whether you call it anti-Black or whether you just call it racism, which is what it is, it's just racism. Plain old racism. There's nothing special about it.
They don't do that to Chinese neighborhoods.
No, but they do things in other ways. They all have...
It doesn't matter. They're still alive. They didn't burn down whole towns of Chinese neighborhoods or Irish neighborhoods.
Why not?
They did dirty shit. But I'm just saying, when Chinese started coming and they created their communities, they lasted because white people left them alone.
That's not true. That's a generalization. There were some Chinese communities that were terrorized, that did have harassment. And burned. They were burned down. I hear about individual Chinese establishments being trashed or set on fire.
And they're anti-Black.
Even in the UK. Yeah.
And they turn out to be anti-Black.
Even in the UK.
When they move into Black neighborhoods, open their stores.
Even in the UK, right? Mm-hmm. Chinese, I can't, I've heard it so many times. Like, a Chinese or Indian immigrant family will move to an area and that area will be so racist towards them and destroy their business, set it on fire, do all these things, and then they'll have to move. They'll just have to take themselves away and move to protect themselves. It happens all the time. Not all the time.
That's not a whole community.
It's still
they burn down whole communities. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen to people, but I'm saying is that and this is where what happens. They burn down the Black communities, right? They let Chinese communities be okay. They might harass them, but when a Chinese or Asian person takes their business into a Black neighborhood because they are safer in a Black neighborhood than they are in a white neighborhood. And this particularly in the United States. How many Black children have Asian people shot because they accuse them of stealing? Right? How many people they take that same? That's the anti-Blackness, and that's
just racism. That's just the counter.
No, it's anti-Blackness because they're not doing it to other. They're not doing it to other. They're not doing it other Asians. They're not doing it to white people who are actually the threat. So if they were racist, okay, be racist towards everybody. Why are you just racist towards? Why is racism only towards us? And then we don't get to say it's anti-Black. It's just like, no, be racist then. Okay, be racist. Be completely racist, because that means Chinese people are superior. I'm just using them as an example. They see themselves as superior. Then everybody else is below them. Be racist towards everybody. Then I will say yes, racism. not anti-Blackness. Because they're not racist towards everybody in the same way.
But you can be racist to one group of people. And you can be racist to just one group of people.
Why?
Yes, you can.
You're not racist then. Because racism...
Selective racism. Selective racism.
First of all, racism, and this is always a debate of like the definition of racism, right? Racism is... particularly most Black Americans see it as systematic, right? It's the systematic things that are done in a society to keep a person down. It's not prejudice, right? So you can be prejudiced. You might look at people and be like, oh, you know, white people don't wash their legs. Okay. Like you might have like those prejudices, right? You might think those things. Racism is more systematic. So when we talk about racism, okay, if you are prejudiced against white people and you're like, oh, white people, they're mean. They might come in here and, you know, be mean to me, but you're not going to kill them because you know their level of power in the society. So you're not going to be like, if you see a 10-year-old little white boy putting something in his pocket, you're not going to shoot him first. 10-year-old Black kid, you're going to shoot him first, right? Like, because that's what's happened in the United States. So kids have gotten unalive shot by Chinese Asian people for them thinking that they were going to take something from their store. Thinking. They hadn't even done it yet. They assumed, okay? And they assumed they were in danger, blah, blah, blah. That is
That is out of order. That is systemic racism. That is systemic racism.
So if I am Chinese, if I'm an Asian person and I am racist or whatever, like I'm not going to, why would I choose the Black people versus the people who are more likely to burn down my house?
That is prejudice.
If I'm in their neighborhood.
That is prejudice right there. Because you just said
it's also anti-Blackness because you still see the power of the white person and you know that you don't have the same power. So you are going to be like, oh, that kid maybe I'll approach him differently. Or maybe I'll just let him take it because it's not worth the problems. Or like, you know, I don't want to call the police because I'm an Asian person and I know that police person is probably going to marginalize me if they show up. So yeah, no, it's beyond. It's so many things that go beyond just being prejudiced and making those conscious choices, because it is a filter that you filter yourself through, I think, when you are someone thinking like that. And it's how society has shaped you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And society has shaped a lot of anti-Blackness.
No, prejudice. I would say it's prejudice because, again,
prejudice isn't violent to me. Prejudice is that look.
No.
Prejudice is that look. Prejudice is that you're gay or you're Black, but I still got to do it. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna let you be. That's prejudice. Like you might be begrudged. You might not like it. You might have to, you know, bite your tongue or go wash your hands after you touch somebody. You know what I mean? Like those are prejudices, right? But these other things, this violence, to me, that's beyond prejudice. I mean, I probably have prejudices, you know what I mean? But I'm not violent.
But do you remember there was this famous social experiment where there was this image of a Black man and a white man? It's like a cartoon. It's not real. They're not realistic looking people. It's kind of like Picasso type. Black man, white man, and one of them has a knife, and you ask the participant who is stabbing whom, and you know, most people say the Black guy is stabbing the white guy, right? So that is social conditioning right there. That's what cultivates prejudice. So I agree with that. But that is just weaponizing skin color, which is what racism is weaponizing skin color.
So did you see the Adolescence series that was on Netflix?
No.
So this series basically is talking about this little boy who was radicalized into incel culture and red pill stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And he ended up murdering another girl. He's 13 years old. The kids were 13 years old. And sweepingly, it's based out of Britain, this show, there was British. Sweepingly, the first thing they said, white people don't do that, Black people do. White people don't stab, Black people do. That was the sweeping sentiment from so many men who felt challenged by watching this and the whole incel culture, because it was really about like how men are getting more violent towards women, and it's happening at an earlier age, right? Like children here, teenagers have not even teenagers. I think like it was like 10, 11-year-old, 12-year-old boys gang raped a little girl. Okay, here in Italy, like a couple summers ago. So obviously there is like,
What color were they?
pardon me?
What color were they?
They were white.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, sweepingly,
Just making sure.
like 5 black people here. So like, but sweepingly, instead of addressing what the movie was about, and most men miss so many points in this movie about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing they said, white boys don't do that.
Okay.
They don't stab.
Who said
that,
this? Who said this? Was this British,
white people?
British white people? Because the truth is, in Britain, knife crime is prevalent.
British white people.
Knife crime is prevalent in black communities. That is a fact.
It's prevalent in white communities as well. And to say that it's not, to say that it doesn't exist with like white people don't stab.
I'm not saying that.
It was the message.
I'm not saying that.
No, that's what they were saying. They were saying they were like, it's a fictional show. It's a fictional story. Mm-hmm. And first they were saying, oh, it's based on a black boy. That didn't happen. And then it was like, no, it's fictional. And they were like, well, it's not realistic because white boys don't do that. And which is not true.
I understand, but it happens at a higher rate in black communities.
It doesn't matter if it happens at a higher rate. White people stab people.
Yeah.
Okay, period. So to say that only black people do it, it's impossible that a white person did it. What does that say? That is not, that's anti-blackness. Anti-blackness.
It's social
because sweepingly, they don't want to even associate this violent behavior with white people when white people are some of the most violent people in the world. So we keep trying to make excuses for people.
You think I'm trying to make excuses?
A little bit. Like, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just like, you know, my patience.
Yeah, you have none of that.
I'm like, I mean, I think that even saying, because basically they're saying that white people don't do it. It's not saying that it's more prevalent here or more prevalent there, or that the reasons behind it are different, because I am pretty sure the reasons behind stabbings in the black community are far different than the reasons behind stabbings in a white community. Mm-hmm. And even in this situation where this little white boy was angry with this girl and stabbed her, is a more likely situation. Whereas in most black communities, they might be sticking you up for something. You know what I mean? Like, they might be trying to get something from you. It's not just them walking up randomly, stabbing a little girl because, you know what, you made me angry and you made me uncomfortable. And these are the things and these are the real conversations that white people don't have amongst themselves. And that I feel like black people placate when we pretend as though it's softer. Or we need to soften it for them to be able to. We've been softening shit for decades and generations. I don't agree with
softening anything for them.
Well, that's why I'm saying we can't just keep saying, you know what, you're being racist. You're being, because that word has also become one of those things that white people use it, right? When white people are the people who perpetuate the most racism towards anybody in the world, they'll be like, oh, I went to Italy and I was so white and my hair was so white that people looked at me funny and it was so racist. Like, bitch, that's not racist. You know what I mean? Like that, even the word they have appropriated for themselves. So yeah, no, we need new words, and we need words that are more aggressive.
So you feel
because
racism...
ultimately, you know, they because what can they say? Because now they're like, oh, you're anti-white. You know what I mean? Like, then
yeah, they will
take anything and say that they are the victims.
They will say that. They do say that already.
And so, how do you think that socially, if we don't start pushing back and saying no, then how do you expect for this utopia future to happen? Because
by doing pro-black things, like for example, you know Stormzy, the rapper.
Mm-hmm. Not really. I don't know their music.
No, but you know of him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like, he's super black. He's like ultra mega black. He's like midnight, right? From Ghana as well.
You mean physically? Okay.
From Ghana as well. But he's like real black.
He's
right?
physically dark skinned.
Yeah. And what I like about Stormzy is that even though I don't agree with everything about him as a person, what I like about him is that he uses his platform for good for black people. Like so he's got this. He had a scholarship that he launched for black kids trying to transition into uni or into higher education spaces, he's made it accessible for them, particularly from low-income families. And then he had another initiative where it's like a pipeline for young black talent to become producers or whatever, right? And and there was this white guy came on TikTok and was like, see, Stormzy's being racist again. What if so what how would they feel if I had a white only initiative? And of course the comments chewed him up. The comments finished him off. I don't need to go into that, right? But my point is, that is pro-blackness. That's what it looks like to me. That's what combating racism looks like to me.
But we do that too.
Just give the opportunities to our own, and don't spend time and energy on those talking to those people saying that, oh, stop being anti-black to me. Just crack on and do your thing. That's it.
But I think that we do. I think that's what I was saying. I don't think Black Americans let anti-blackness stop them. It's just saying, no, it's still anti-black.
They like
just
to complain.
Just because something exists doesn't mean that you stop doing it, you stop trying. I feel like everything that we do, like even our conversations, you know, we've talked about different things, and the videos we want to make are all pro-black. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that anti-blackness, it's more of saying like there is anti-blackness and we need this because of that, and we need those things because if this didn't exist, we wouldn't need those platforms, we wouldn't need those voices. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we know it exists is our recognition to do something about it. So yeah, you raise your platforms that you have, those people who can do that, you know what I mean? They do, I think. But at the same time, you're still battling all of these other voices, all of these other things, all of these things that are telling you you're not good enough.
Why do you have to battle them? Why can't you just ignore them?
Because they come and try and take you down. Why is it that we see even on social media, right? White people get way more bigger platforms quicker doing nothing. Doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, but if you...
Versus a lot of Black people who are really, really good at what they do. White people will steal the shit that Black people make and become like fucking millionaires or whatever on social media. Mm-hmm. And we're fighting to say, what? You know what I mean? Like, I created that. I was the one who did it. So like even recognizing how to gatekeep because of anti-Blackness is important for us to understand. Like, there are things that we have to gatekeep. Well, exactly. Because if we don't recognize that, because of anti-Blackness, they will take our shit and fucking go to the moon with it and leave us behind. We are constantly in a battle to have, like, you have to think about all of these angles, even when you're doing stuff, even when you're putting something out there. How can I protect myself? Because if I'm going to create art and someone else tries to copy my art, mm-hmm. and they have the opportunity just because of the complexion of their skin to do better, why am I not recognizing that as a human being? Like, as a Black person, why I just want to keep like doing dumb shit, like letting people take all my shit? Like, I'm crazy? No.
So like, exactly, that's what I'm saying. This is the point that this ties into what I was saying earlier when I mentioned about letting the younger generation develop strategies and solutions to these long-standing problems.
We gotta let them know they need a strategy, though. Yeah. If they don't know there's anti-Blackness,
obviously,
how will they know they're gonna know.
They're gonna know. I'm not saying to not talk about it. I'm not saying pretend it doesn't happen. I'm just saying don't focus all your energy on calling it out. You spend too much time calling it out rather than focusing on actually developing ways to make it harder for them to take your shit. Like, this is what Toni Morrison said when she was saying that, like, we're focusing on the wrong thing. We're focusing on like racism and colorism and all these little isms when we should actually be moving on and moving forward with our strategies to make it harder for the past to continue as it has. That's my point.
And that's true. I agree with that. But I just think that, and I think that I feel like Black people are just, when we call it out, it's just more to call it out. It doesn't stop us from strategizing. But I do think that it needs to be called out.
Just gives a platform and opportunity for more hate to come in. If we just,
I don't think that's true.
I think that is true. I
think that is what white people have told us. Because every time Black people call out racism and say something against it or talk about it, then they're like, if you stop talking about it, it'll go away. You know, like, that is what white people have told us over and over and over again.
That's not what I'm saying to do. I'm not saying that. I'm saying have these discussions. Again, I remind you, I talk to my kid about these things, right? Mm-hmm. We'll definitely keep it in the forefront because I want her to know the reality of the world that we live in so that she can avoid the pitfalls. Obviously, that's paramount, right? Very important.
But I don't think that
But
a
I'm not-
lot
but
of
I'm-
people are
but-
doing that.
But I'm just saying, I don't allow her to sit and wallow in it or focus on
No.
that.
No, and I don't think Black Americans wallow anything. I don't think we wallow. Look at all of the things we've created. You know what I mean? Look at all of the things we've tried to do. And I think that we continue to try and do.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, wallowing is different to me than stating the fact, right? Like, a fact is a fact. Like, it's just saying the wall is a wall. And so anti-Blackness exists, you know, like, move accordingly. And so I think that is why, you know, more Black America, like, I even feel like this dive that we started off talking about is a part of recognizing anti-Blackness. Nobody else is going to do it for us.
Pro-Blackness. It's just pro-Blackness. It's giving ourselves our own history back. That is pro-Blackness.
And that's fine. We can say, yes, negative. It's pro-Blackness, but it's negative. Also anti-Blackness that left us there.
Okay, fine. You could say anti-Blackness left us there, but that's choosing to focus on that. And I'm saying,
I don't think we're focused, but look how beautifully, I'm not focused on that, but I'm just saying that the structure is what it is. The structure that exists is there. And until you decide to face a structure and break said structure, then it's always going to exist. And so I don't think that calling it out means we're wallowing in it. I mean, I can understand, like, if every day I sat here and be like, oh, that's another anti-Black thing, you know,
that's what it feels like from the particularly from Black Americans. It just feels very like every single day. Like whenever
but I mean,
go,
is
like
that because that more immigrants don't want to deal with the fact that people are anti-Black? I mean, like, is it just you don't want to deal with that? Like, I mean, it's good to like, we all have friends of different cultures. We all have friends of different, you know.
I'm very selective. Literally, because of what we're talking about.
I'm just saying, like, I will say that I know for me here in Italy it's really difficult because what I recognize is how underlying their shit is, right? So I don't know to the degree in which I can trust a lot of people here, you know? Yeah. And so, and it's not necessary. It's just like, yeah, no, it's anti-Black. You know what I mean? I was going to say, maybe it's not, but no, it is. And, you know, even my friend I was telling you was looking for an apartment, right? And he saw this apartment, really loved it. The woman showed him the apartment. He said she had her grandkids there. She was like, oh, you want to hold my grandkids? You know, like, you know, he speaks fluent Italian. Like, no, like, he's been here for 30 years. He speaks fluently in Italian. You know, he was like, they were kikiing and, like, laughing it up. And he was like, you know what? It seems like she would be a great landlord. I'm going to, you know, maybe move forward with this apartment. Calls the agency. Yeah, she doesn't want to rent to Black people. Period. And it's like, yeah, you can kiki with these motherfuckers sometimes. You can, like, they'll let you hold their grandkids and have all of these, like, moments. You think this is a great human being. And then you find out, no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, and, like, so that's been my struggle here in Italy, knowing that, or feeling, I don't feel a lot of genuineness. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a feeling. And when you meet people, you can feel like layers, you know what I mean? Like, this is a surface layer, and that's all I'm really going to be exposed to, and that's all I need. And so for me, like, the depth of character matters. So I do think that as we move in this world, it's fine you keep moving. You can say that dive is pro-Black. The reason it's needed is because of anti-Blackness. So those are that, like, it's a pro-Black thing to do because anti-Blackness exists. And if anti-Blackness had not existed, maybe they would have unearthed already. Maybe they would have recognized that the tragedies of the past already. If we could have had recognition of our own Holocaust, you know, that would even say, okay, the anti-Black structures are fraying at some point. To even recognize those things so globally as a society, because every fucking country in this world ignored everything that happened to Black people in America. everything that happened for hundreds of years, they ignored it. They've ignored what's happened in Africa. And that is purposeful. Other countries, they don't get that same fucking treatment. So, I mean, you want to call it whatever you want to call it, but for me, it's going to stay anti-black. And we can be pro-black. We can be pro-black and we can do all kinds of pro-black shit. But that pro-black shit is needed because of anti-blackness.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got a Taurus moon, so you're going to be stubborn. That's fine. Okay, so my final advice before we move on to just a few minutes with the slave ship list, because I know you have to go. My final advice to black people is, I would say, be discerning. Be more discerning. Because, like you said, it really irks me how trusting our people are. I mean, it's a beautiful quality. It's a beautiful part.
But we're not trusting towards each other.
Yeah, that's the paradox, right? But
there's that anti-black.
I mean, yeah, that is internalized racism, yes. But my point is, be more discerning. Don't be so giving. Don't be so trusting with anyone, regardless of race. I mean, be more trusting towards black people. But then again, all skinfolk ain't kinfolk. So it's like every angle. It's like for flip's sake. But my point is,
then you have to be like, oh wait.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just say,
I don't want to use anti-black.
Don't be so trusting to people. Don't just trust anyone. Okay. Don't just give people the benefit of the doubt. You're handing it out like it's free money. Stop doing that. Stop giving people the benefit of the doubt. They have to earn your trust. Be more like a cat, not a dog. Cats make you work for their affection. Yeah? They make you work for it. You have to earn it. And even then, and I say to my daughter as well, even then, don't give them access to your full heart. Just give them a little fragment. Just give them a little bit to work with. Okay? Don't. And I think once we start doing that, then we will feel safer in our communities and we will know who the infiltrators are a lot quicker. Okay? For example, Traore. Look at that as a microcosm, okay? He was surrounded, his compound was surrounded by these invaders. I'm talking about it like it was an action film, like a...
It kind of sounds like it was.
But because you have to be eyes peeled. If I think his mistake was allowing them in. But like you see, like with Namibia, they've started making white people have visas now. Very late in the day. But they're finally waking up to the fact that maybe we shouldn't just allow these white people, these colonizers, to just come roaming in and treating us anyhow. At least they're trying to do something about it now. So take a cue from what Africa's slowly starting to wake up, and stop being so trusting to people. That includes...
But I'm just saying, how many millions of years old is Africa, and they're just learning this lesson?
I know.
I'm just saying, like,
exactly.
I'm just saying, like, we don't have time. Like, put the labels where we need to put them. And I mean, like, if we don't want to spend... I don't actually think that Europeans are going to give us a few thousand more years. I think they're going to try and, like, wipe us out before then. So
they haven't been able to do it ever, so they're not going to be able to.
No, I mean the whole world. I don't think they're just going to end black people. They're going to blow us all up. Or they're going to ruin the environment to the point that we can't survive in the normal way. And that is global. And we see the beginnings of that now. And through, like the different aspects around our environment and war and all of these things that are slowly building right now in politics, especially in Europe, that even if you're not in Europe or in America, that can still affect your air quality, your water quality, your availability to certain like resources, because the environment's the environment for all of us. So I think that when we saw, I don't think they're gonna just blow up black folks. They're gonna blow up the world, like, so in their effort to have dominance. But that's just, it is what it is.
Okay. So that's your closing.
I guess.
Okay. So now we're just gonna have a look at. It's on the screen for me now.
Okay, it's on your screen.
Here we have a list of confirmed slave ships that sank with enslaved Africans on board.
Okay, I'm waiting for it to arrive.
All the tension. Yeah, and your Chiron is Taurus as well, so you're really like, in this lifetime, I'm gonna stand on what I believe in. I'm not wavering at all.
Okay, I got it.
Oh, great. So, first up we have the Zong, right? Did you know about the Zong massacre?
I mean, I don't know any of these specific slave ships, to be honest with you. I know that Africans were thrown overboard for insurance purposes. I know that some boats were even burned for insurance purposes and sunk on purpose. So I know that was the case in some of these like things. Like I don't know the specific stories though.
So the massacre of 132 Africans thrown overboard for an insurance claim, and I'd like us to revisit that at some point and do a deep dive. But you may have heard of the Clotilda. I mean, I've heard of that. That was the last known slave ship to be brought to America, and it landed in Alabama. And then we have the Henrietta Marie. I didn't know about this, but it's on display in Florida Keys right now. Its remains were recovered. I want to look into that and find out why this particular ship was salvaged as opposed to like any other, and why this was chosen to be in a museum. But these were like 1700s, 1800s, pretty much all of them except for Adventure Galley. What a name! It sounds like a pirate. It sounds like you know those kids' play centers where they have like pirate themed parties. It's like Adventure Galley.
So can I tell you something crazy? So what's the Johnny Depp movie where he's the pirate?
Oh yeah,
Pirates of the Caribbean. Apparently, there was the origin story that they cut out of the movies. Was that Johnny Depp's character was commissioned, hired, whatever, to take a slave ship. And when he realized that it was a slave ship, he freed everybody, right? He didn't take it. And that's why they destroyed his ship, and he had to do the whole like get the black beard whatever thing to get his ship back.
That's right.
But they cut that out of the movies apparently.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is the fact that if we look at this list again, you see here La Concorde, right? This must be the ship because it was captured by pirate Blackbeard.
Blackbeard, yeah.
In 1717, right?
Yeah.
And so that's very interesting. And what a name! I mean, thinking about the airline as well.
So this is an interesting one though. The Rudder or Rodur, an 1819 blindness outbreak. Captives thrown overboard. Yes. How do you have a blindness outbreak?
Right. That's
very interesting. That sounds like some juju. Yeah. That sounds like some juju.
Oh, we're gonna get into that. And then we have Esperança in 1750, West African coast. Right, a Portuguese slaver was lost along with along with captives. Sounds like an overthrowing to me. That's so because I know our people are so resilient.
I mean, I don't believe that some of these ships that wrecked, like the stories that we have about them are the whole story. No, I'm pretty sure there was resistance. Course, yeah. Like a blindness outbreak, that sounds like some fucking juju right there. Yeah. That's some fucking voodoo.
Yeah, we got to get into that.
Yeah.
You want to look into that next week?
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. Okay. But I think that wraps up today's episode.
Thank you for letting me rant. I feel like I ranted at you a lot today.
That's right. I think we had a good discussion. I know people are going to be crazy in the comments.
So we'll see.
I hope I don't get cancelled today. Hopefully you don't get cancelled. All right. I feel like we need a closing.
Yes, we do. Well, thank you for joining us. Now go ahead.
What are you putting it on me for?
Because you did the intro. You want me to do the outro?
Yeah. Teamwork. Come on.
What should I say? We're calling it Quest. Or Queer Eye Straight.
Yeah.
Quest. Okay. All right. Well, you know what? I think that wraps it up for Quest Podcast today. And I want to thank everybody who listened, watched, and we want to hear your comments and discussions and arguments and different points of views and let us know. So share, and definitely follow.
And don't forget to follow and subscribe to @the G Life and @Reiko UK. All one word.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Ciao.